Now, you can argue about the coloration of Christ if you want to, but I can sell that very quick and we can go on to the next subject. Was he a Roman? The answer is no. Was he a Greek? The answer is still no. These were the only European types in that part of the world at the time. If he was neither Roman or Greek, he was one of those other people. And all of those other people were non-European and non-white. And he came from the other people. The physical concept of Jesus Christ did not exist. Now, how did it come into existence? Because the Pope commissioned it to come into existence. Michelangelo painted the picture using one of his relatives as model. And that picture, one of the finest pieces of propaganda ever projected in history, has changed the minds of millions of people as who's supposed to represent God, whoever he or she is, and I have no problem with the she. My main point here is that if you are the child of God and God is a part of you, then in your imagination, God's supposed to look like you. And when you accept a picture of the deity assigned to you by another people, you become the spiritual prisoners of that other people.
Hey, call me Louis. This is my spot. LuiSpot.
All of the elements that went into the making of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam came out of Africa. And you have to distinguish between the elements in the formal organization of the religions themselves.
Spirituality is a way of accepting the fact that there is a spiritual force in the universe larger than all of mankind. But someone had to come along and invent a word called God. Religion is the organization of spirituality into something that became the handmaiden of conquerors. Spirituality was a part of the total life of the people. Before the coming of the Europeans, the African was very religious. The step pyramid was originally built for the temple at the top where you can go up and pray. This is what made the civilization of the Nile so great.
The religions began to decline when outsiders, foreigners, took over those elements, organized them for their own political purpose, gave them a name, and began to project them to the world for their political purpose. Then the outsider created a religion, but he forgot the African substance, and the African substance was spirituality.
The first visitors to Africa came in the 1700s BC. These were the people who would later be called Hebrews. Now, black people are ticklish on this because black people think that everything in the Bible is true. I question the intelligence of anyone who thinks everything in the Bible is true or supposed to be true. It's allegory, stories told to illustrate a point at a time when there were very few people reading books. And most of what went into the making of the Bible was copied from Egyptian texts. Now, if you want to get so dewy-eyed over the Bible, which is a carbon copy of a carbon copy, why don't you go back and read the original Egyptian text?
Now, the Roman presence in North Africa is going to force into being one of the great events in human history. Roman taxation, Roman oppression would cause people to turn to new gods and question old gods, to turn to a story about a God who comes forth to rescue them. Now, they would draw from African folklore the story of the child in the manger. Now, what am I saying? Later, in retrospect, he was referred to as Jesus Christ.
John Jackson said that if Christ had risen 2,000 years before, he could have read his own autobiography. Because they picked him up and placed him inside of an already existing story.
And you see where all these stories started from. You see where the story of the Exodus started from. Now you can so do it. I do actually think there was an Exodus. These people walked into Africa. Why couldn't they walk out? Why did they have to go by sea? Nope. Why did the sea have to part? If you read Egyptian literature, you will discover that the whole story of somebody parting the sea started with about 3,000 years before the Hebrew entrance. I should not use the word Hebrew entrance, but the entrance from Western Asia. Now let's get one thing straight, because black people are confused about all religions.
Now, you can argue about the coloration of Christ if you want to, but I can sell that very quick and we can go on to the next subject. Was he a Roman? The answer is no. Was he a Greek? The answer is still no. These were the only European types in that part of the world at the time. If he was neither Roman or Greek, he was one of those other people. And all of those other people were non-European and non-white. And he came from the other people.
If you have spirituality, you can use any one of them or none of them. Because the African spirituality encompassed the essence of all of them. The white man has religion, but he has no spirituality. Then you must study and understand the difference between Islam and Arabism, something which is difficult for black people to understand. The Arab did to Islam what the white man did to Christianity. He subtracted the spirituality and made it a political instrument for his opportunism. But when it came over to the African accepted the spiritual aspect of it and forgot that to the Arab it was then and still is a political game, and that the spiritual aspect left him very early, and that he was then and is now playing a game, and that the spiritual aspect never touched him. And if you listen with me with some kind of patience, I will show you exactly what I mean, because if you see that it was the African who used this religion spiritually, and it was the Arab who used it politically. It is the African who still uses it spiritually, and it is the Arab who still uses it politically.
Constantine decided to make Christianity the religion of the whole of the Roman Empire. Now we're coming to the critical period when the Roman domination of the church so corrupted the church, the Africans began some disenchantment with the Roman interpretation of Christianity. Constantine calls a council of bishops and priests at a place called Nice. It's the Nicene Conference. It is at this conference that the European created a European concept of Christianity.
When St. Augustine heard about the conference at Nicaea, he said, these people are giving us a religion we had 3,000 years ago. They make me laugh.
It was at this conference that they began to take the African saints out of the literature of Christianity. Now the corruption had started. The physical concept of Jesus Christ did not exist. Now, how did it come into existence? Because the Pope commissioned it to come into existence. Michelangelo painted the picture using one of his relatives as model. And that picture, one of the finest pieces of propaganda ever projected in history, has changed the minds of millions of people as who's supposed to represent God, whoever he or she is, and I have no problem with the she. Nearly all religions were brought to people and imposed on people by conquerors and used as the framework to control their minds. My main point here is that if you are a child of God and God is a part of you, then in your imagination, God's supposed to look like you. And when you accept a picture of the deity assigned to you by another people, you become the spiritual prisoners of that other people.
Now, what has this got to do with the New World Order? It has to do with because the imprisonment of your mind around concepts that you have not properly examined had made you a pawn in somebody else's game because you have not examined the game. And the game was to control you. It is a successful game because you have not examined the players and dismissed the game.
Now, that sums it up for this video. What do you guys think? Share thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. Let's have a proper discussion about this without having me impose my opinions and ideas on this matter. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it so that the YouTube algorithm can know that this video was so much interesting and share it far wide to more avid viewers just like you. Subscribe and click the notification bell if this is your first time watching these videos, and so that you can be notified as soon as we make a new upload on videos just like this. My name is Louis. Until next time, peace out.